If there's one genre that's easy to lose hundreds of hours in, it's open world games. But not every open world is worth exploring. These are the ones that truly stand out and are absolutely worth your time. So, let's count down 20 open world games that every fan of the genre should play. Let's begin. Let's start with number 20, and it's Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced. I've got to give Ubisoft credit here. They understood exactly what made Black Flag so special in the first place. Instead of changing everything, they focused on making the experience feel modern. Movement is smoother, combat feels more responsive, stealth has been cleaned up, and a lot of those little annoyances from the original are finally gone. The Caribbean is still one of the best settings the series has ever had, and with the visual upgrades, sailing between islands somehow feels even more immersive than it did back in 2013. The game doesn't take many big risks, and you'll still notice a few older mission designs here and there, but honestly, I don't think that's a bad thing. This feels like a remake that respects the original instead of trying to replace it. If you've never played Black Flag, this is easily the best way to experience Edward Kenway's story, and if you already have, don't be surprised when you find yourself singing sea shanties all over again.
And we'll tell you what.
Coming in at number 19 is Crimson Desert. Crimson Desert is one of those games that constantly surprises you. It starts off looking like a typical fantasy RPG, but the more you play, the more you realize it has its own identity. The combat is easily one of the biggest highlights. Every weapon has real weight behind it. Fights feel satisfying, and once you start combining different abilities, battles become incredibly fun to experiment with. But what impressed me even more is the world itself. You're not just running between objectives. The game keeps pulling your attention in different directions with random encounters, unexpected events, and places that simply make you want to stop and explore. It can feel a little overwhelming at first because there's so much going on, but once everything clicks, it's hard to put down. If you're the kind of player who enjoys wandering off the main path just to see what you'll find, Crimson Desert is exactly the kind of open world you'll lose yourself in.
Justice without power is but a hollow cry.
Moving on to number 18, we've got Forza Horizon 6. At this point, Playground Games has pretty much perfected the open world racing formula. Horizon 6 doesn't try to reinvent the series, it simply takes everything that already worked and makes it even better. The biggest star here is the map. Driving through mountain passes, busy city streets, peaceful countryside, and long coastal highways never gets old because every area has its own personality. It's one of those games where you set a waypoint, then completely forget about it because another road catches your attention. That's what makes Horizon so addictive. Racing is fantastic as always, but honestly, I probably spent just as much time cruising around with no destination as I did actually competing. Sure, the overall formula will feel familiar if you've played previous Horizon games, but when it's this polished, that's hardly a complaint. If you love open worlds where simply driving around is part of the fun, Forza Horizon 6 is incredibly easy to recommend. Coming in at number 17 is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. This is one of those rare games where exploring the world is just as enjoyable as progressing the story. Every region feels completely different, whether you're crossing huge open plains, climbing mountains, or wandering through lively towns packed with things to do. What I really like is that the world never feels empty. You'll constantly stumble across mini-games, side quests, hidden challenges, and little character moments that make the journey feel more personal. The combat is another huge reason this game is so much fun. It perfectly blends fast-paced action with strategy, so every character feels unique and worth learning. Even after dozens of hours, I was still switching party members just to try different combinations. Yes, there are a lot of side activities, and some people might think there's almost too much to do, but I'd much rather have that than an open world that feels lifeless. If you're looking for a massive adventure filled with memorable characters, fantastic combat, and a world that's genuinely fun to explore, Rebirth absolutely deserves a spot on your list.
Understood.
Okay, there, bring it! Don't think you'll walk away from this!
You should didn't have to be this way, but no choice.
At number 16, we've got Ghost of Tsushima. Ghost of Tsushima is one of the few open world games where I never felt like I was following a checklist. Instead of filling the screen with hundreds of markers, the game encourages you to simply explore. You might follow a fox through the forest, chase a bird to a hidden shrine, or ride toward a beautiful landmark just because it caught your attention. It's such a simple idea, but it makes exploration feel natural instead of forced. The combat is just as impressive. Every sword fight feels quick, precise, and satisfying, especially once you unlock the different stances and start taking on larger groups of enemies. And visually, this game is still one of the best looking open worlds ever made. There are moments where you'll honestly stop writing just to admire the scenery. The story is excellent too, balancing emotional moments with plenty of action. If you enjoy open worlds that reward curiosity and let you immerse yourself in their atmosphere, Ghost of Tsushima is an easy recommendation. Let's move on to number 15, and it's Marvel's Spider-Man 2. One thing Insomniac absolutely nailed with Spider-Man 2 is making traversal feel like the best part of the game. Swinging through New York was already fun in the first game, but adding the web wings and increasing the overall speed somehow makes it even more addictive. There were so many times I planned to start the next mission, only to spend another 20 minutes flying around the city because it was simply that enjoyable. Combat has also been improved with new abilities, especially the symbiote powers, which make every fight feel faster and more aggressive. Switching between Peter and Miles keeps things fresh, and both characters bring something different to the experience. The story doesn't overstay its welcome, and it does a great job balancing emotional moments with blockbuster action. Some players wanted more side content after finishing the main story, which is a fair criticism, but what's here is polished from start to finish. If you're looking for an open world that's just plain fun to move around in, Spider-Man 2 absolutely delivers. Coming in at number 14 is Cyberpunk 2077. This game has one of the biggest comeback stories we've ever seen in gaming. We all remember the rough launch, but if you're jumping in today, you're getting a completely different experience. Night City is easily one of the most impressive open worlds ever created. Every district has its own personality. The streets are packed with life, and just walking around at night with the neon lights reflecting everywhere makes the city feel incredibly immersive. What surprised me the most is how often I'd get distracted. I'd head toward the next mission, then suddenly find myself chasing a side job or exploring a random alley because something interesting caught my eye. The combat feels much smoother now, the RPG systems are deeper, and building your character is genuinely rewarding. Add in the Phantom Liberty expansion, and it feels like the game finally became what everyone hoped it would be. If you've been avoiding Cyberpunk because of its launch, it's definitely time to give it another chance. At number 13, we've got Horizon Forbidden West. Horizon Forbidden West is one of those games that constantly makes you stop and appreciate the world around you. Whether you're climbing snowy mountains, exploring dense jungles, diving beneath the ocean, or wandering through massive deserts, Every area feels handcrafted and completely different from the last. It's easily one of the best looking open world games ever made, but thankfully it's much more than just pretty graphics. The combat against the machines is still the biggest highlight. Every encounter feels like a puzzle where choosing the right weapons and targeting the right weak points makes all the difference. Exploration is also much smoother this time thanks to new traversal options that make reaching hidden locations a lot more enjoyable. Sure, the map is packed with activities, and some of them follow a familiar open-world formula, but I honestly didn't mind because the world itself is so much fun to explore. If you love discovering beautiful locations while taking down giant robotic creatures, Horizon Forbidden West absolutely delivers.
Coming in at number 12 is Grand Theft Auto 5. It's honestly crazy that after all these years, GTA 5 is still one of the easiest open world games to recommend. A lot of games have tried to match what Rockstar created with Los Santos, but very few have come close. The city feels alive in a way that's hard to explain until you actually spend time in it. You can ignore the main story for hours and still find yourself entertained just by driving around, causing chaos, discovering random events, or stumbling across small details that make the world feel believable. The 3 playable characters also keep the story fresh, with each one bringing a completely different personality to the campaign. Sure, some of the gameplay mechanics definitely show their age now, especially after more than a decade, but the world itself still holds up incredibly well. GTA 5 isn't just a great open world game, it's one of the biggest reasons so many developers started taking the genre more seriously in the first place.
Looks like our window to get out, F. Deal with the trash truck. I'll get the bonds to Steve's guy. The government don't need me no more.
Rounding out the first half of the list is Batman Arkham Knight. Arkham Knight proves that an open world doesn't have to be enormous to leave a lasting impression. Gotham City is dark, detailed, and packed with atmosphere, making it one of my favorite cities to explore in any superhero game. Just gliding across a skyline before dropping into a group of criminals never gets old. And then there's the combat. Even years later, the free-flow fighting system is still one of the smoothest and most satisfying in gaming. It makes you feel exactly how Batman should feel. Fast, powerful, and always in control. The stealth sections are just as good, giving you plenty of freedom to clear enemy encounters however you want. The Batmobile is probably the most divisive part of the game. Sometimes it's a lot of fun, but there are definitely moments where it feels a little overused. Even with that small complaint, Arkham Knight remains one of the best superhero games ever made, and an open world that's absolutely worth exploring.
Next, on number 10, and it's Days Gone. Days Gone is one of those games that gets better the longer you stick with it. I know the slow opening isn't for everyone, but once the world opens up, it's surprisingly hard to put down. What makes this game different from most zombie games is how much the world itself affects the way you play. Your motorcycle isn't just a vehicle, it's your lifeline. You're constantly thinking about fuel, repairs, and whether it's worth taking a risky shortcut through a freaker-infested area. Then there are the hordes, and honestly, they're some of the most intense encounters I've experienced in an open world game. Seeing hundreds of freakers charging toward you never stops being terrifying. On top of that, the Pacific Northwest is a fantastic setting, with forests, mountains, and abandoned towns that make every ride enjoyable. The story takes its time, but once it gets going, it's much more emotional than I expected. If you skip Days Gone because of its launch, it's definitely worth giving another chance. Coming in at number 9 is Middle-earth: Shadow of Mordor. Shadow of Mordor is one of those games that still feels unique even years after it launched. The biggest reason, of course, is the Nemesis system. It's such a brilliant idea that I'm honestly surprised more games haven't copied it. Every orc captain remembers your previous encounters, so if someone defeats you, don't be surprised when they show up later stronger than before and start reminding you exactly what happened. It creates these personal rivalries that feel completely unscripted, and that's what makes every playthrough different. Beyond that, the combat is incredibly satisfying. It's fast, fluid, and makes you feel more powerful as you unlock new abilities. Sneaking into enemy camps, chaining together executions, and taking over entire armies never really gets old. The open world itself isn't the biggest on this list, but it's packed with systems that constantly create memorable moments. If you enjoy games that let gameplay create its own stories, Shadow of Mordor is still one of the best examples of that. At number 8, we've got Fallout 4. One thing Bethesda has always been great at is rewarding curiosity, and Fallout 4 is probably one of the best examples of that. You can leave a town with one simple objective, then somehow spend the next few hours exploring abandoned buildings, discovering hidden vaults, helping random strangers, and completely forgetting what you were originally trying to do. That's exactly what makes the Commonwealth so much fun to explore. There's always something interesting waiting around the next corner. Compared to the older Fallout games, the gunplay feels much smoother, crafting is far more useful, and the settlement building system gives you another reason to spend time in the world. It's true that the dialogue system isn't everyone's favorite, and some role-playing choices aren't as deep as previous games, but the freedom to explore more than makes up for it. If you're the kind of player who loves wandering off in a random direction just to see what you'll find, Fallout 4 is incredibly easy to lose yourself in. Coming in at number 7 is Death Stranding 2. Death Stranding 2 is one of those games that reminds you not every open world adventure has to follow the same formula. Instead of constantly throwing enemies or objectives at you, it slows things down and makes the journey itself the main focus. Surprisingly, that never gets boring. Planning your route, dealing with rough terrain, unpredictable weather, and deciding how much cargo to carry turns every trip into its own little challenge. At the same time, the sequel expands on the original in almost every way. Combat feels smoother, stealth has more depth, and there are far more memorable set pieces scattered throughout the world. It still has that classic Kojima style where you never quite know what's going to happen next, and honestly, that's part of the fun. This definitely won't be everyone's favorite game, but if you enjoy getting completely immersed in a unique world that rewards patience and exploration, Death Stranding 2 offers an experience that's unlike almost anything else. Next, we have Far Cry Primal. Far Cry Primal is probably the most overlooked game in the entire Far Cry series, and I think that's a shame, because it does something completely different. Instead of guns, helicopters, and explosions, you're dropped into the Stone Age, where survival comes first. Every hunt matters, every weapon feels primitive, and even taking on a small group of enemies requires a little planning. One of my favorite features is being able to tame wild animals. Whether you're charging into battle with a saber-toothed tiger or scouting ahead with an owl, it adds a completely different layer to exploration and combat. The prehistoric setting also makes the world feel fresh, because it's not something we get to see very often in games. Sure, you'll still recognize some familiar Far Cry mission design, but the setting and gameplay are different enough that it feels like its own experience. If you want an open world game that's willing to take risks, Far Cry Primal is absolutely worth your time. Let's start the top 5 with The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. The Witcher 3 is one of those games that completely ruins average open-world RPGs for you. Once you experience how much care went into this world, it's hard not to compare everything else to it. What I love most is that exploring never feels like a waste of time. You might head out to complete one Witcher contract, then somehow spend the next 2 hours helping strangers, uncovering hidden stories, or getting completely distracted by a game of Gwent, and somehow none of it feels like filler. Even the smallest side quests have memorable characters and interesting choices. Geralt is also one of those protagonists who grows on you the longer you play, and by the end of the journey, it genuinely feels like you've been on an adventure with him. Throw in 2 incredible expansions, a gorgeous next-gen update, and one of the richest fantasy worlds ever created, and it's easy to see why so many people still consider The Witcher 3 one of the greatest open-world games of all time. Coming in at number 4 is Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. Metal Gear Solid 5 is one of those games that gives you complete freedom and then just steps out of the way. Every mission feels like a giant sandbox where you're free to approach things however you want. You can sneak through without being seen, quietly knock everyone out, call in air support, or create absolute chaos if that's more your style. That's what makes the gameplay so addictive, because no 2 players will tackle a mission the same way. What really impressed me is how the enemies actually react to the way you play. If you rely on headshots too much, they'll eventually start wearing helmets. Attack under the cover of darkness often enough, and they'll begin carrying flashlights. It's such a small detail, but it makes the world feel like it's learning alongside you. The story doesn't quite stick the landing, and that's probably the game's biggest weakness, but when it comes to pure gameplay and player freedom, The Phantom Pain is still one of the best stealth games ever made. At number 3, we've got Red Dead Redemption 2. Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't just a game you play, it's a world you slowly settle into. From the moment you start riding across the frontier, everything feels incredibly natural. Towns have their own routines, wildlife behaves realistically, strangers have stories to tell, and even the smallest details make the world feel alive. It's one of the few games where I actually enjoyed slowing down instead of rushing to the next objective. Sometimes I'd spend an entire session hunting, fishing, or simply riding through the countryside without making any story progress, and I never felt like I was wasting my time. Then there's Arthur Morgan, who has to be one of the best written protagonists in gaming. Watching his journey unfold is a huge part of what makes this game so memorable. Yes, the pacing is slower than most modern open world games, but I honestly think that's exactly what gives Red Dead Redemption 2 its charm. It's a game that rewards patience, and the experience stays with you long after the credits roll. Coming in at number 2 is The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild completely changed the way I look at open world games. Instead of constantly telling you where to go, it simply drops you into Hyrule and lets your curiosity do the rest. If you see a mountain, you can climb it. Spot something strange in the distance, chances are there's a secret waiting for you. That freedom makes every discovery feel like it was your own instead of something the game planned for you. The physics system is another reason this game is so much fun. Whether you're solving puzzles, experimenting with different strategies, or accidentally creating complete chaos, the game constantly rewards creativity. The weapon durability system is probably the only part that divides players, and I get why. It takes some getting used to, but once you stop treating weapons as something to collect forever and start treating them as tools, the whole system makes much more sense. Breath of the Wild is all about exploration, and very few games have ever done it better. And finally, at number 1, we have Elden Ring. Elden Ring is one of those games that constantly reminds you why exploring an open world can be so exciting. Every time you think you've seen everything, the game reveals something even bigger hiding just around the corner. You'll head toward what looks like a small ruin, only to discover a massive underground city, a hidden dungeon, or one of the game's unforgettable boss fights. That's the magic of the lands between. It always feels like there's another secret waiting to be found. Combat is as challenging as you'd expect from Software, but the open world design makes the experience much more approachable than previous Souls games. If a boss is giving you trouble, you're free to leave, explore somewhere else, get stronger, and come back later. That freedom makes a huge difference. Elden Ring won't hold your hand, and it definitely asks for your patience. But if you enjoy discovering things for yourself instead of following map markers, it's one of the most rewarding open world adventures ever made. And that's our list of 20 open world games every fan of the genre should play. If you think we missed a game that deserves a spot, let us know in the comments. I always enjoy seeing your picks. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe for more gaming countdowns, and I'll see you in the next one.